Hello and welcome on this dark and spooky night where ghosts rummage through the halls and loved ones get turned into paintings and heard throughout the walls of a faint whisper of one name, Mario. Boy, it would suck if I finished another Halloween video in November again, right? Come on, I couldn't make a video talking about one Mario brother without talking about the other, right? Luigi's Mansion and Super Mario Sunshine just go hand in hand with one another all too well. This was the era of Nintendo just slapping a cleaning utensil backpack on their plumber boys. And like Sunshine, Luigi's Mansion holds a special place as one of my favorite video games of all time. Sucking up ghosts, searching around the place, collecting money, and trying to beat my previous scores has had me coming back to this game so many times, especially around Halloween. The atmosphere is so gloomy, dark, and spooky, and unlike anything we've ever gotten out of a Mario game before. I adore the presentation here so much. I know it sounds silly now, but this game genuinely frightened me as a kid. It's a good thing those cowardly traits didn't follow me into adulthood. Nope, not at all.
No! Ah! Oh no! Oh, no, get away from me, you ugly monster man! Oh, Jesus Christ.
Dude, even the beta footage and the old rumors about this game made me further love and appreciate this game so much. Like, look at the Space World 2000 clip. Look at what happened to my boy. Had I seen this as a kid, I would have freaking cried. This was the game that defined Luigi as more than just a player to palette swap, giving him his first leading role. Okay, well, in a game that matters anyway, Luigi's Mansion became an integral part of Luigi's character and the Super Mario series as a whole. But is Luigi's Mansion as good as I remember, or am I lost in the darkness of nostalgia? Well, there's only one way to find out as we take a retrospective look at what exactly is Luigi's Mansion. Luigi's Mansion was developed by Nintendo EAD, their main software development division in Kyoto, Japan up until 2015. The game was directed by Hideki Kono, who has worked on a handful of titles in the Mario series and was the director of Super Mario Bros. 2 Yoshi's Island, Super Mario Kart, and Mario Kart 64. Today, he is mostly known for producing the Mario Kart series. The game was also produced by Takashi Tezuka and Shigeru Miyamoto. The concept of Luigi's Mansion started with the idea of exploring around in a bunch of different rooms, similar to the dungeons from the Legend of Zelda games, but with Mario as a protagonist and that the game takes place inside a big house. The design first began as a Japanese-style ninja house, but this was later changed to resemble more of a dollhouse, giving the player the perspective as if they were looking through the wall. With the GameCube's new dynamic lighting, the development team focused on shadows and darkness, which then led to the European/early American-themed Haunted Mansion that we all know today. And since Mario is known for being brave and courageous, the team switched him out for his younger brother Luigi. As a launch title, Luigi's Mansion's development history starts around the same time as the Nintendo GameCube, and even helped shape the console as we know it today. The Luigi's Mansion team requested dynamic lighting to be used in the game, which the hardware team would then add a graphics chip to the console, making this request possible. The development team also requested that the GameCube would have 2 analog sticks, and developed Luigi's Mansion with that control scheme in mind. And during playtesting, the team requested that the C-stick would be redesigned to be wider and more comfortable to the thumb. The team really wanted to sell the idea that this mansion was old and dusty and incorporated dynamic particles. This eventually led to the usage of fire, water, and ice, as the team also wanted to add realistic atmospheric elements. The portrait ghosts were also added to help the ghosts be distinguishable from boos. And originally, only Mario and Luigi were planned to appear in this title, with no other members of the Mushroom Kingdom. This was to differentiate Luigi's Mansion from other typical Mario games, though other characters such as Toad and Bowser would eventually be included here. As a game, Luigi's Mansion was built around the idea of a short but replayable experience, with the difficulty balance enough of not being too easy to the player, but not overwhelmingly challenging either. Late into development, Miyamoto suggested a button to turn off Luigi's flashlight, and being able to instantly tap on the walls by pressing A. Luigi calling out to Mario was also added late into the development to help reinforce Luigi's objective to the player. Luigi's Mansion was also at one point planned to support a stereoscopic 3D mode, but since 3D TVs weren't as prominent in the early 2000s, or, ever, this idea was scrapped. Luigi's Mansion was first shown off at Space World 2000 as a tech demo for the Nintendo GameCube, showing off the then new console's graphic capabilities as well as the ability to animate with real-time motion capture. However, this feature was hardly ever used in the final product. It also introduced us to the short-lived, depressed, and/or possessed Luigi. Look, I know the whole Luigi has to save Mario within 24 hours or else Mario and the mansion disappears forever and Luigi becomes depressed thing isn't real, but I really love that concept and I wish it was. Luigi's Mansion was shown off again at E3 2001, but this time announced as an actual game, resembling pretty close to the game we know today, but with a handful of differences to the UI, poltergeist, and ghost designs. There's quite a handful of changes made to this version, such as a scrapped Basher ghost and Luigi's vacuum catching on fire if the player uses it too much, and a more finalized build was shown off a few months later at Space World 2001. Luigi's Mansion was released on November 18, 2001, alongside the Nintendo GameCube, selling about 348,000 copies in Japan and a whopping 2.9 million copies in America. In total, about 3.3 million copies were sold, making it the 5th best-selling GameCube title. Luigi's Mansion received mostly positive reception from fans and critics. Publications such as GameSpot, Nintendo Power, IGN, and Game Informer praised the game for its graphics, gameplay, design, and presentation. Of course, the game isn't perfect, and met its fair share of critiques. GameSpot, IGN, and a few other publications also criticized the length of the game and its formulaic gameplay. Even GameSpot named Luigi's Mansion as the most disappointing game of 2001. The game, however, would be awarded the 2002 BAFTA Interactive Entertainment Award for its audio design, and placed 99th in the official Nintendo magazine's 100 Greatest Nintendo Games of All Time. Luigi's Mansion's elements, world, and characters would make their way into future Mario games, such as Mario Power Tennis, Double Dash, Mario Party 6, as well as a stage in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and an attraction for the Wii U launch title, Nintendo Land. Luigi's Mansion would eventually get two sequels, Dark Moon in 2013 and Luigi's Mansion 3 in 2019, as well as a 3DS remake on October 12, 2018, developed by Grezzo Co., which was also one of the last few 3DS titles before the handheld inevitably died. It did, however, bring back the once scrapped 3D mode, and debuted Gooigi before his proper appearance in Luigi's Mansion 3. Unlike Luigi and his brother's platforming outings, Luigi's Mansion is a high-score-based puzzle adventure game, requiring Luigi to navigate room after room, defeating ghosts, collecting keys, solving puzzles, capturing boos, obtaining treasures while on a night-long quest to save his brother. Equipped with Luigi for this adventure is his Poltergeist 3000, a vacuum used for sucking up ghosts. And let's just get this out of the way right now. Sucking up ghosts requires the player to flash them at first with Luigi's flashlight. The closer he is to the ghost, the more stun time he has to react to vacuuming them up, which admittedly was something I never truly realized until I did this playthrough. In order to inflict damage on the ghosts, the player has to hold the control stick in the opposite direction till the ghost's health reaches 0. The player could suck up more than one ghost at a time should they manage to get 2 or 3 close to one another. However, if they do separate, this will cause Luigi to lose control fairly easily. The player will also have to look out for other nearby ghosts, who can hit you while vacuuming up one of their ghastly comrades. The poltergeist can also dust off household objects and suck up money. An unnecessary but neat feature with the GameCube controller is that you can adjust the amount of air Luigi sucks in by how hard you press the R button. Oh, also if you hold down the L button, you can also adjust how much air Luigi shoots out as well. That is a also cool feature. Throughout his adventure, Luigi will acquire 3 elemental metals, fire, water, and ice, which allows him to commit arson, flooding, and snow damage respectively. Once obtained, Luigi can suck up elemental ghosts found in places such as candles, sinks, or fridges, which will give him a meter. The player will come across these guys fairly commonly, and it's always a good idea to have them on hand. There are a few occasions where the player will need these to progress forward, such as lighting a candle, putting out a fire, or freezing a nearby body of water. The player will also encounter a few ghosts that will require you to have a different element to defeat them in a rock, paper, scissors manner. So, on this playthrough, I sort of realized just how busted the elemental mechanic is. If you really don't feel like vacuuming up any of the ghosts you encounter, you can just send them straight back to hell instead. Spraying them with any element will reduce their HP by 5 and stun them for a second, and once they're unstunned, just hit them again. You can lightly tap the L button and watch their health slowly drain. It is a slower method to dealing with them, but if you got 3 or 4 of them up in your face, why not send them to a slow, brutal, and agonizing icy demise? Another device Luigi has on hand is his Game Boy Horror, a multi-tool device that assists him throughout his adventure. And as a kid who cherishes his Game Boy Color and who still has it to this day, I absolutely loved seeing an actual handheld put into the game. Congrats, Nintendo! You did targeted advertising of your own product in your own game. That also contains an ad for Pikmin. Cha-ching! That's a lot of money right there! The Game Boy Horror has multiple functions, such as providing a map of the whole mansion and informing the player of which door each key goes. The player can also view their collection of money, gems, and collectibles they've acquired, as well as a brief bio of all the mansion's portrait ghosts. But a really neat feature is being able to look around the room through Luigi's perspective. Scanning objects will provide the player with Luigi's thoughts on what he sees. I love this so much. While minuscule, it provides just a little bit of extra character and personality to Luigi. Luigi doesn't really talk in most of the games, so it's nice to read some of his internal thoughts. I also love his commentary on some of the artworks hung around the mansion, how finicky he is with hats, how he doesn't like pointy things, how he can't really play the piano, and what constitutes good taste in his eyes. Luigi's also based for taking a stand against trophy hunting and hurting animals. I mean, the man's got the blood of a million Koopas on his hands, but still, based. The player is most likely going to interact and examine the mirror found in the entrance, which provides another mechanic that will help the player. Anytime a mirror is scanned, it will automatically send Luigi right back to the entrance of the mansion. This can be used as a shortcut in some instances and save the player some time. At any time, the player can also press the A button for Luigi to call out for Mario. This doesn't really do anything practical at all, but I just think this is a really cute detail and a reminder to the player as to why Luigi's here in the first place. If Luigi is low on health, he becomes more anxious and starts yelling out his brother's name, which is just another great detail. Luigi's Mansion will have the player entering room after room, vacuuming up ghosts till the lights turn on, grabbing a key, proceeding to the next room, and repeat. On paper, that sounds tedious and boring. But the game does mix up a lot of things to keep each room just as interesting as the last. For starters, there's a variety of common ghost types that the player will encounter, with only a few reskin variants. The environment design also plays a huge part in making each location feel distinct from one another. Almost every object is interactable, whether they're cabinets that contain money for Luigi to collect, or dresses hanging on a rack that pulls closer towards his vacuum. I absolutely love it when a video game rewards the player for exploration and searching all the nooks and crannies within the environment. The player will be rewarded with a ton of money and health by checking out the household objects. If they look in the right places, they can even find gold mice or speedy spirits, which will reward the player with a ton of money if they catch them. However, this is a mansion run by devious ghosts, so sometimes they will throw a poisonous mushroom or a fake door to keep you on your toes. What also keeps the pace fresh is the game's portrait ghosts. There are 23 ghosts throughout the whole game that are more human-like and contain different personalities. Alongside finding Mario and stopping King Boo, this is also one of Luigi's main objectives in the game. Most of these ghosts either act as puzzles for the player to figure out on how to make them vulnerable, or act as a test of endurance as a mini boss battle. While I wouldn't call these ghosts super in-depth by any means, I always thought their additions made the place feel like an actual home, and I love the designs for all of them. There are also boss battles that the player will have to fight against at the end of each area, and they can be sort of challenging, and even though I've played this game like 20 times or so by this point, I still usually get beaten up a bit in these fights. Another task the player will have to manage is finding the mansion's 50 boos. almost every room within the mansion will contain one of these ghostly boys hiding around in the furniture. I say almost every room because they cannot be found in any of the bathrooms. While they might be mischievous little demons, they, at the very least, respect people's privacy. And we gotta give them props for that. All the boos have boo puns in their names, such as Luigi and Boomerang and Game Boo Advance, which is delightfully ridiculous, and I am absolutely here for it. Boos can only be found once a room is lit up, and unlike the other ghosts, boos behave differently. So long as Luigi's pointing towards them, their health will start to decrease. However, they can still move around and will try to gun into a nearby wall, escaping into the next room or hallway. In the early game, this isn't too bad as their health is usually somewhere between 30 or 50 HP and will go down fairly easily. However, once the player is in the final act, each boo will have 300 HP and will constantly leave the room, padding out the runtime by forcing the player to leave and re-enter rooms over and over again. It really starts to make finding them just very tedious. And if a boo escapes into a room you currently don't have the key for, you'll have to remember that they're hiding in that room later on. Pro tip, once you clear a room, immediately hunt down the boo. Besides the hot and cold light on the Game Boy Horror when you're in a room containing a boo, the game will not provide any indicator as to which rooms still have a boo in them. And if you're not taking mental notes to which rooms you did or didn't do, you'll be running around all over the place trying to find any remaining boos if you're planning to get them all. 35 out of the 50 will need to be searched for, while the remaining 15 can be obtained during the Boolos's boss battle. Should the player obtain them all, they're rewarded with a golden diamond, a very expensive gem which will be necessary if you're going for A rank. Luigi's Mansion can be broken down into 4 chapters. Area 1 is sort of a tutorial and introduction, tackling only rooms by the entrance. Area 2 has you clearing out rooms on the first floor. Area 3 is mostly the second floor. And Area 4 will have Luigi going back and forth between the attic and basement and any remaining locations left unexplored. At the end of each act, you're evaluated on your performance with each portrait ghost, obtaining a bronze, silver, or gold portrait frame based on how much HP you sucked in one go. That sounds really weird without context. Or how much HP you had after a boss battle. You're also evaluated on how much money you've obtained so far. Not every room, boo, and portrait ghost is mandatory in order to clear the game as well, but you will miss out on collecting a ton of money, which will affect your endgame rank if you do. The player can also freely visit EGAD's gallery at the end of each act or when starting up the game. Here the player can observe all the paintings of the portrait ghosts that they've obtained. On repeat playthroughs, they'll keep their most valued design. You don't necessarily obtain anything special from acquiring gold portraits, it's more or less just for bragging rights. You can also view your endgame rank and speak to EGAD, who will provide you on some lore about the Game Boy Horror and portrait ghosts.
I do not like this painting, Charlie. Smug aura mocks me.
For my criticisms, I think vacuuming up portrait ghosts can feel a little inconsistent at times. Like, I'll either get them in one go, or they'll move too far away and break free multiple times, which can feel a little unfair and out of the player's control. This will also lock them out from achieving a gold rank unless they got 90% of their health. I also struggled a bit with depth perception at times, as it can be kinda hard to tell if you're truly pointing the flashlight or vacuum on a ghost or not. The Boolossus fight is the most notorious example of me not understanding where the boos are relative to Luigi's position. It took me like 3 minutes trying to get this last boo. The physics can also be a little wonky at times, such as trying to hold a ball or Luigi auto-locking between 2 or 3 different ghosts. The game can also be a bit too generous with the health at times, where I just constantly took punches left and right with no worries and consequences. And in the final act, oh god, the final act, Luigi will have to go from the attic to the basement, to the attic, back to the basement, back to the attic one more time, and finally conclude in the basement, which going back and forth can feel mindlessly tedious. Paired with the boo problem I brought up earlier, the final act can feel like a bit of a crawl to finish. However, despite all these complaints, it doesn't really bog down the overall experience. Luigi's Mansion isn't a particularly difficult game. It's fairly generous on giving out hearts to the player on a standard playthrough, and it isn't that long of a game either, clocking in at about 4 to 5 hours. which, like the first Pikmin game, really helps the replayability of this title, and I always come back to Luigi's Mansion around this time of year. It's sort of a Halloween tradition for me at this point. On first completion, the player can go through the game again, but with the option of exploring the hidden mansion, which makes the Poltergust 1.5 times more powerful and enemies can do double damage. Well, at least in the American and Japanese versions anyway. In the European version, they got the hidden Giga Chad Mansion, featuring a mirrored layout, more ghosts to deal with, more agile boos, and tougher boss battles. Luigi just gets on his vacuum during the Boolossus fight. Like, there's no explanation for this. The man just do. You also acquire more money in this playthrough. And in the PAL version, it's actually impossible to achieve A rank in a normal playthrough, since they require the minimum amount of money needed from 100 million to 150 million. Some of these features, minus the mirrored mansion and vacuum surfing Boolossus battle, would be included in the 3DS version of the Hidden Mansion as well. When starting the game, it immediately throws our boy Luigi on his way to the Haunted Mansion. No explanation is given as to why he's here in the first place, unless you read through the instruction manual, which is kinda interesting. Sure, NES and Super NES titles would include a plot synopsis in their instruction booklets, but this was the GameCube, and by this point, Nintendo had no problems introducing their stories in-game. Luigi's Mansion, as far as I'm aware anyway, is the very last Nintendo game to do this. Luigi wins a mansion in a sweepstakes that he didn't enter, but is still excited nevertheless. He calls Mario and tells him to meet him at his new mansion. Mario, who was supposed to arrive first, is nowhere to be seen, and now Luigi must go in after him. I can't believe Luigi fell for the "we've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty" scam. In the mansion, Luigi meets Elven Gad, who rescues him from a few ghosts and learns that the mansion only spawned a few days prior to the game. There's also an optional conversation with Egad, where we learn that King Boo and his Boo minions freed Boolossus, the third boss battle in the game, as well as the other imprisoned portrait ghosts in Egad's gallery. And you know, now that I think about it, most of these portrait ghosts aren't necessarily evil. Sure, some of them are total asshats, but like, they're just dead people that Egad keeps locked away as paintings, most of which are just sort of vibing and doing their own thing until Luigi steps in and provokes them. Considering that some of them have been trapped for years, can you blame them for acting defensively and aggressively towards Luigi? Is Luigi actually the good guy here? In this 40-minute video essay, I will question the ethical morality of Luigi and the decision. Yeah, I'm still convinced Egad is chaotic neutral here. So, spoilers ahead, I guess. Just like the Super Mario Sunshine video, there's not a whole lot here, but if you want to uncover this stuff yourself, here you go. You're not gonna miss anything. So Luigi's main objective is straightforward. Stop King Boo, rescue Mario, and recapture the portrait ghosts and Boos. Area 1 introduces us to the mansion and Egad, providing the info I just went over. At the beginning of Area 2, we're introduced to King Boo and the other 50 Boos, which are hiding under a cage? Who put them there? Were they trapped? Shouldn't they be out and about in this mansion? Did Mario do this? This is never explained. But anyway, at the beginning of Area 3, Luigi has to go down to the bottom of the well in the courtyard, where the player gets to learn of Mario's fate as he is trapped inside a painting. This wouldn't be the first time the man's been in one, but sure. And is being watched by King Boo, relishing in Mario's despair as Luigi can only sit and watch in horror. Using Mario's items found across the mansion, we learn from Madame Clairvoyant, the only friendly ghost in the whole game, that Mario is alive and trapped. She also mentions that King Boo has revived Bowser, and like, was it ever established that Mario killed Bowser in Mario 64? This part kind of perplexed me a bit as a kid. This area also ends with defeating Boolossus. Area 4 begins with a lightning strike that shuts off all of the power. This causes every room in the mansion to just go ham and relentless with ghosts, and nowhere to save and quit besides this one telephone that you can only do once. And let me tell you, Luigi's Mansion made 6-year-old me suffer from extreme anxiety that still plagues me to this day. I always hated this part as a kid, mostly because I was too young to understand what was being said here and where to go, so I would just run through room after room in the dark and get my ass handed to me by a bunch of spooky boys. The end of Area 4 is the final confrontation between Luigi and King Boo, who gazes into his Mario painting and toys at Luigi, but he wants to add a Luigi painting next to his Mario one to expand his collection. And if he's like me, he'll then want a Princess Peach one, and then a Wario one, and then a Daisy one, and then a God one. He turns the Mario painting into Bowser and sucks Luigi in. And admittedly, I always found this part pretty spooky as a kid. Luigi then finds himself in Brazil. I can't believe I wrote that in the script. Where King Boo controls a giant hollow Bowser that Luigi must now face off against. Like the other Boos, King Boo will have his health drained so long as Luigi's pointing his vacuum towards him and can still freely move around. Also, I found it odd that this form of Bowser shoots ice when that's an ability he's never done in any other game. This battle is actually pretty tough, and while I do think it is kind of a cop-out to throw Bowser in very last minute into the game, I think this is one of my favorite Bowser battles though. It's definitely tied with New Super Mario Bros. Wii, that's for sure. After King Boo is defeated, we get to see Luigi stand there, dumbfounded, next to a giant decapitated Bowser. He also takes the king's most prized possession, a symbol of his status as the king amongst Boos, his crown. And I'm about to drop some deep cut lore on you all real quick. So, King Boo's crown counts as a red diamond, which looks really big and pretty. So, how much is its value? 5,000 gold. Oh, okay, that's not as much as I thought it would be, but how much is the rest of the gems? Surely it's worth more, right? Well, the blue diamond is worth 2 million gold, and the gold one is worth 20 million gold, which is way more valuable than King Boo's crown. And should the player vacuum up all 50 Boos, they're gifted a golden gem, meaning that Boo pun number 35 had more monetary value and, my guess, presumably power, than King Boo himself. But surely the gem is still valuable, right? I mean, it must be worth something and not equivalent to a single coin. Oh. King Boo's crown, his distinct feature that makes him the leader of all the Boos, is as worthless as a penny. All he did in the whole game was stare at the Mario painting. He did nothing to stop Luigi directly until he came at his door. He hid behind a big Bowser costume and didn't fight Luigi directly. He failed to lead his Boo brethren. He is no king. He is a sham. But hey,
That's just a theory!
Luigi brings Mario's painting to EGAT and sends Mario through the Ghost Portrificationizer backwards. At the end of each act, we get to see this machine used normally, and with cartoon logic, it makes visual sense as to how the ghosts are turned into paintings. I always found it funny seeing this machine go in reverse and hearing Mario making sounds in pain until it just shoots him out of the machine. Clearly, this process isn't practical and probably hasn't even been tested before. I take back what I said during my Sunshine video about not playing a Mario game for the plot, because this is still one of the most wholesome and adorable moments in any video game. Mario, the courageous older brother, the main character in the whole franchise, is dizzy and looking really silly with a grate wrapped around his neck. Luigi, who has endured the roughest night in his whole life, being frightened to his wits' end, beaten up, mocked, and put through the ringer, not just for himself, but also the anxiety, uncertainty, and worry he had for what had become of his brother. All of that doesn't matter now. They're both safe, and he can finally relish in the moment as he points and laughs at Mario, with tears of joy running down his face. Even on this playthrough, this never ceased to put a smile on my face. I absolutely love this so much. And we're then accompanied by one of the best credit themes ever. The mansion disappeared shortly after Luigi left, and a new one is built based on the amount of money the player collected in their journey, giving this game a proper and satisfying conclusion. While obviously not the most in-depth of stories, for Luigi's Mansion's short runtime, it's simple, fun, spooky, and sweet. Though I was hoping that there would have been more lore on all the 23 portrait ghosts. Each character provides the player with a short bio, and I love reading these little tidbits. I remember as a kid, the mentions of death and dying in a video game would always startle me. I also used to think that Mr. Luggs literally ate himself to death by cannibalizing on his flesh and dying that way. And let me tell you, Luigi's Mansion made 6-year-old me aware of my own mortality and a constant fear of death's inevitability that still plagues me to this day. It's also kind of disturbing that a lot of the ghosts aren't just old people, but between 1 to 76 years old. Now, Chauncey is supposedly born a ghost, but the human portraits found around his room make me think otherwise. Also, when scanning the vase in Chauncey's room, Luigi comments saying, "Hey, it's flower season, isn't it? I almost forgot." And while flowers grow throughout the whole year, flower season leads me to speculate that Luigi's Mansion takes place during spring. Besides Neville, Lydia, Chauncey, Henry, and Orville being a family, we don't really get much in terms of the relationships between the other ghosts. Only that Shivers, the butler, is simping for a girl that's 1/3 his age, Uncle Grimly likes to remain in the darkness alone, and that Vincent Van Gogh is the one to paint and create all the common ghosts the player encountered throughout the mansion. Also, I don't know what the heck Jarvis is supposed to be, but I love that his name is Jarvis and that he lives in jars. Luigi's Mansion really loves its puns. If you had to ask me what I think was the strongest attribute to Luigi's Mansion, I would easily say the presentation. Let's start with the environmental design. Every room found within the mansion is carefully crafted to look distinct and different from one another. With only a few exceptions, such as the paintings, most rooms do not reuse assets from other rooms, providing a variety of designs for common objects such as chandeliers, tables, chairs, and drawers. The architecture gives off realistic textures, such as carpets, stone walls, and wood, but contrasts with warped and crooked structures and foundations, such as shelves and window frames that keep the design cartoonishly creepy as well. With only a few exceptions, nothing found within the mansion is perfectly straight or accurately geometrical. The usage of lighting and shadows is also really well done. Complemented with the quiet ambient sounds of monster murmurs, being in an unlit room really makes you feel alone in the dark, which helps sell the creepy factor. And with the warm yellow colored lights, paired with Luigi's whistling, really changes the whole mood of a room as a safe place to reside in. One of my critiques is that besides the candles, none of the light sources actually produce light, but instead comes from the camera, which when the player is boo hunting, it can make their actual position a bit confusing due to the shadow placements. The dust particle effects, spiderwebs, and 19th century furniture are all such minor details, but it really immerses the player that this place is old, abandoned, and filthy. While there are a few exceptions, most of the rooms and hallways have this darker brown, drab, and beige color palette, which does make Luigi's saturated attire pop out from his environment. The common ghost designs have this colorful and cartoony art style, which, like Luigi, really pop out from the environment. However, despite this, these ghosts do not mess around and actually come off as intimidating and creepy and as an actual threat to Luigi. Someday in the future, whenever I get around to doing a video on Dark Moon or 3, remember this point because I will bring it up when I talk about their ghosts. The portrait ghosts are also fairly interesting as they definitely look more human than any other character we've seen in the Mario universe. Well, besides the actual humans in Odyssey anyway, their designs are stylized enough to where they mesh pretty well with the Mario art style. The portrait and common ghost designs are pretty fantastic in my book, and both of these types of designs blend so well with one another. However, this does create sort of an awkward juxtaposition when you contrast them to the simplicity of Boo's. You know, the main antagonists and Mario's tried and true ghost character. I mean, it'd be silly to not have Boo's here, but you see how these two designs clash, right? The animations are great too. Luigi is constantly paranoid whenever he's in a dark room as he grits his teeth and cold breath comes out. How he quickly waves his hat as it gets caught on fire, how he feels his heart after accidentally releasing the booze, the way his body squashes and stretches every time he gets jump scared by a ghost. All these little details bring home the feeling that Luigi is straight up
not having a good time.
I also adore his smile every time he picks up a key and successfully captures a boo. The dust particles and vacuum animations are also super impressive, especially for the time this game came out. This would have been impossible to do on the N64. The ghosts are also well animated. They all look natural floating around from the rooms, trying to escape the vacuum, and attacking in their own unique ways. Like, look at this guy, he's straight up strangling Luigi. That's pretty freaking brutal, dude. I also adore the cutscene animations as well. There aren't too many in this game, and they're certainly not as impressive as Luigi's Mansion 3. Seriously, Luigi's Mansion 3 had the best animation work in any Nintendo game ever. I love this adorable little goofball so much. Look at his wholesome smile as he tests the poltergust with Polterpup. Aww. Luigi is super expressive in all the cutscenes, though I did pick up on the recycled animations of his hat and hair flying during the boss battles. Also, I'm now noticing Luigi jumps at the end of the portrificationizer sequence, so like, is the poltergust heavy or not? Why doesn't he jump in this game? Unlike every other Mario game, the music takes a back seat throughout most of the adventure. We only ever hear the main orchestral theme whenever navigating through hallways. This simple theme brings an eerie and unsettling atmosphere to the whole mansion. This song is iconic and catchy. The player will hear this track several times as they make their way from room to room, but never to the point of nauseam. And when Luigi's in a dark room, he will silently hum the theme in fear. And in a lit room, he'll whistle to the tune to himself in a more calming tone, or how when he's outside, we're given a melancholic piano cover. This theme will also play whenever EGAD is calling Luigi on his Game Boy Horror. And because I love this game so much, every October I also make it or Dual Scream as my ringtone. Outside of the main theme, the game also uses a blend of piano, orchestral, percussion, and what I'm gonna call spooky synths in its instrumentation. If you've played this game, there's no way you haven't started humming this tune at least one point or time. Since the music isn't as prominent in this title, the sound design truly gets to shine here. There's a lot of great subtle sounds. The vacuum inhaling, the flickering of Luigi's flashlight, coins hitting the floor, furniture being dusted off, curtains being pulled. All of these sounds feel so natural. Not to mention the ambient sounds of ghosts murmuring in the dark and lightning flashing in the background. The sound design definitely makes the atmosphere feel, pardon the pun, alive. Not to mention all the cartoonish sound effects included here too, such as the poison mushroom bouncing around all over the place, the sound of a defeated ghost flying into the vacuum, or when a heavy ghost appears, it makes a deeper tone. Or my favorite, the sound every time Luigi sucks something up. It's all just so delightful. The Game Boy Horror also uses chiptune and digital organ sounds when browsing the menus, which is forever ingrained into my brain. Also, the ghost voice clips are just so memorable here. The golden ghost is very iconic. They definitely add to the spookiness of the game when they immediately yell at you the second they appear. Luigi's voice clips are also top notch, as he's constantly gasping at every little thing that comes his way. Like I said about Mario in Sunshine, I do miss some of these more higher pitched clips that Luigi had in the earlier GameCube days. If you played 3, you'll notice there's a huge difference on how Luigi sounds. There's nothing wrong with it. I think Charles Martinet has continued to do a fantastic job with the character, but I do miss these older clips. I was actually surprised that they were included on the 3DS version of this game. Though, take a shot every time you hear Luigi say, because this one voice clip is used every single time Luigi picks up a key, sucks up a boo, and celebrates sucking up said boo. Also, unrelated, I now need a mod that just replaces all of his voice clips with Charlie Day quotes.
These people are freak shows, man. Freaks. But you're keeping your cool. You are keeping your cool. You know why? Because you are the Green Man.
So for this review, I also played the 3DS port of Luigi's Mansion, and it's alright. So I'm going to start with the notable differences, such as Luigi's model being updated to his more modern look. There's also a few additional voice clips added or changed, and I think some of them are new for Luigi. Luigi also hits the chest open instead of, All of the Game Boy Horror features are now reserved to the bottom screen and easier to access. There's also now achievements and amiibo support, which helps make the game easier. I also love that Polterpup revives Luigi if the player scans the Luigi amiibo. We need more of this little guy. During the introduction of the game, a short cutscene was included in Egad's lab, where we're introduced to his future self from after the events of Dark Moon, and he then sends Gooigi back in time to assist Luigi, a year before his main debut in Luigi's Mansion 3. This is one of the few times where continuity exists within a Mario game. Gooigi can be used for co-op, which, we'll touch on that one in a bit. Also, I love that dual screen is playing during this bit. That remix is just such a bop. I love this so much. The player also has the option to use Luigi's strobe light from Dark Moon instead of his regular flashlight. This works as a risk versus reward as it gives you more range, but you have to charge it up at first. I tried this a few times, but I didn't like that this locks Luigi into facing only one direction when ghosts kind of move around all over the place. It didn't really work for me. The gallery has also been redesigned, as well as a bestiary for all the common ghosts and boos, along with a new achievement system, which is a really nice addition. What I do like about this version, besides it being portable, is that there's a few improvements made here, such as removing the sand pile in the cellar, making navigation easier when boo hunting. The lighting no longer comes from behind the camera, but instead the actual objects in the environment. The Boolossus battle is also significantly easier, since the shadows of the boos were now directly down instead of put at a weird angle. While I never really used the 3D on my 3DS, it is neat that Luigi's Mansion went full circle on the 3D functionality 17 years later. I also really like what was done with the Hidden Mansion. I like that we get a definitive hard mode that also allows the player to aim higher and try to obtain a new S-rank mansion, as well as platinum paintings for all the portrait ghosts. It definitely incentivizes the player to replay the game once more. Though I do wish we got the mirrored layout and writing the Poltergust Boolossus battle. Never forget what they took from you. And on to the things that I don't like about this. So, co-op. Part of my excitement for getting this game again on the 3DS was to experience co-op with a friend of mine. And so it turns out that you and your friend both need a copy of the game in order to play together locally, which stings. This was 2018. The 3DS was on its way out the door by this point. I don't think too many people were clamoring to get their hands on a copy of Luigi's Mansion, let alone two to play together. It's such a misfire because Luigi's Mansion would have been perfect for download play. I would have hated growing up with this version had I had to go buy another copy just to play with my brother. Look, I'm no programmer, I don't know how all of this works, but how did Mario Party DS support 4 players on one cartridge but this couldn't? Hell, Triforce Heroes came out 3 years before this and you were able to play the whole game together with just download play. But don't worry, because it turns out there is download play. It's just restricted to the training room and gallery. Why even bother? Okay, so like, you can re-challenge portrait ghosts in co-op and you can compete to get a higher score, but look, the frame rate is just so choppy and you'd be spending more time in the loading screens than actually in the game. This is really just a throwaway feature here. So, I don't have any input on the co-op adventure in this game because I wasn't willing to spend another $45 plus tax on an additional copy of a game I now own twice, so sorry about that. Another complaint is the controls. So, with the new 3DS, you have the option of using the C-stick nub to turn Luigi around, and I'll be honest, I haven't used this thing too much, and I don't know if mine is either broken or unresponsive, but holy hell, this thing was a nightmare to work with. When vacuuming, Luigi will always strafe in the direction he's vacuuming. Trying to get him to turn around with this thing is just so uncomfortable and unresponsive. I try to counter this by constantly moving Luigi into a position where I wouldn't have to rotate him as much, but this would cause my left thumb to really feel sore after a while. The funny part was, literally after I finished the game, I then tried the co-op on my old 3DS, and I had completely forgotten you can make Luigi rotate around by holding B, which works, but it does feel a little cumbersome having to hold R, hold B to turn left and right, and tilt your 3DS up and down to raise and lower. There was a reason why the GameCube was specifically designed with 2 control sticks in mind. There is the Circle Pad Pro option, but I don't own it. The game also takes a bit of a hit in the frame rate department and can feel sluggish at times. It's not to the point of being unplayable by any means, but it certainly isn't nearly as smooth as it was on the GameCube. I also revisited Dark Moon and I realized just how much smoother this game feels compared to this one. Also, along with the strobe light option, they really should have added Luigi's run button from that game too. It really would have saved a lot of time in the final act. But for better or for worse, this is still the same Luigi's Mansion that we know and love. I do like the new additions of what's included here. However, I wouldn't call this the definitive experience. This port was born within a coffin that was already 6 feet underground. No one cared about the 3DS in 2018, and due to the hardware limitations of the handheld, I really think it constrained this port to its true potential. It's not terrible, it's serviceable enough, especially if you want to play the game on the go, but I do think you're better off with the GameCube. But if there's anything I learned from this experience, it's that I haven't been to GameStop in so long and they don't have a section for used 3DS games anymore. What dystopian world are we living in? So, should you play Luigi's Mansion? And does it still hold up? Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to love about what's included here. The gameplay is fairly simple by design and keeps the experience feeling fresh from start to finish. Due to the short runtime, Luigi's Mansion doesn't overstay its welcome, leaves the game open for replayability, and makes the bar of commitment fairly small if you're looking for a bite-sized experience. The atmosphere and presentation of this game is so dark, moody, gloomy, and spooky, making it a quintessential Halloween-esque game. I adore this game a lot, and of all the single-player games I've played, I think Luigi's Mansion is probably my most revisited game of all time. While this game is still near and dear to my heart, it isn't perfect. The depth perception can be a bit tricky, collecting the last few boos was tedious, vacuuming and the physics can be a little inconsistent at times, and the fourth act really dragged on with climbing up and down the mansion. I would recommend against it if puzzle adventures don't interest you, games that require you to move and explore at a slower pace, or if the idea of vacuuming up ghosts room after room sounds monotonous and boring. I'd also advise against it if you're looking for a more typical Mario platformer game. I had a great time playing both Super Mario Sunshine and Luigi's Mansion back to back, and reliving two of my favorite games from the GameCube era, as well as trying out the 3DS port for the first time and seeing all of the minor changes made to a beloved classic. Luigi's Mansion's available on the Nintendo GameCube, which might be difficult to come by these days, but it's also available on the Nintendo 3DS, and I would recommend checking it out. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. This was a long and fun project to do alongside the Super Mario Sunshine video. If you like this video, please be sure to leave me a like and subscribe if you're new. Let me know what your thoughts about Luigi's Mansion or my video. I would absolutely love to hear it. Yeah, I hope I have this done before Halloween. I'm really going to be racing to the finish on the having this out. If it's already November by the time this goes up, I tried. I'm sorry. I spent way too long on that Super Mario Sunshine drawing, and that really set me back. I originally planned to have the Sunshine video launch on September 30th and this one on October 1st, but life had different plans and I got caught up, and this became a much larger task for me to do. But that's okay. I love this game and I love Super Mario Sunshine, and I'm glad I got to talk about both of them back to back. Anyway, I'm gonna probably take a little bit of a break for November and just relax, catch up on my backlog, and have fun. So real quick, let me plug in a few things. I have my Twitch at twitch.tv/afox on the internet. We play a lot of games on there. I'm going to try to stream a little bit more now that this video is done. And I would love to have you there if you want to see me play games live and be silly. I have a Twitter at afoxbtweeting. I am also trying to use Twitter more often. I have my Discord server. I post a lot in there if you want to keep up to date with me and my stuff. And my little community, I'd love to have you. I have my second channel where I have 4 videos at the time of this. I made pancakes for Nico, and I did a very good job at it. if you want to see my nonsense there. Third channel, my VOD channel, if you want to see past streams, there you go. I haven't gotten to talk about it before on my channel, so there it is. And yeah, that's about all. I'm very tired. It is currently 2:41 in the morning, and I have just recovered from a sickness, so and I am very tired, so I'm gonna get going now. But I hope you all have a wonderful evening and that you all stay safe and take care.